The great Lady Day was dying, handcuffed to her hospital bed by federal agents. But in her final moment, Billie Holiday reached out and grasped Nurse Claire Morrison's trembling hand. Her last words weren't about music, fame, or regret. They were about something far more extraordinary, something so revolutionary that the hospital immediately classified it, terrified of the implications. What Holiday whispered would forever change how we understand the miracle of human consciousness itself. If you're fascinated by untold stories that challenge everything we thought we knew about legendary figures, consider subscribing to witness more revelations that history tried to bury. July 17, 1959. Metropolitan Hospital in New York City buzzed with an unusual tension that had nothing to do with typical medical emergencies. Word had spread through the corridors that Billie Holiday, the legendary Lady Day herself, lay dying in room 6A, her wrists shackled to the bed frame by federal narcotics agents who refused to show mercy even to a woman drawing her final breaths. The sight was grotesque, almost medieval in its cruelty. America's greatest jazz vocalist, the woman who had moved millions with her voice, reduced to a prisoner in her own deathbed. Claire Morrison had been a nurse for 12 years, but she had never encountered anything quite like this. The federal agents stationed outside Holiday's room treated the dying woman as if she were a dangerous criminal capable of escape, their cold professionalism creating an atmosphere more suited to a maximum security prison than a hospital. But what troubled Claire most wasn't the agents or their handcuffs. It was the way Holiday's eyes seemed to hold secrets that went far deeper than any addiction or legal troubles the world knew about. As Claire entered the room for what would become the most significant shift of her career, she noticed something peculiar about Holiday's condition. Despite the medical charts indicating severe liver failure and the obvious ravages of years of substance abuse, there was an alertness in Holiday's gaze that defied her physical state. Her breathing was labored, her body frail, but her mind seemed remarkably sharp, as if some inner force was keeping her conscious for a specific purpose. The monitoring equipment painted a grim picture: blood pressure dropping, heart rate irregular, oxygen levels declining. Yet Holiday's eyes tracked Claire's movements with an intensity that sent chills down the nurse's spine. But there was something else happening in that sterile hospital room, something the medical staff couldn't explain and the federal agents couldn't control. Other nurses had reported strange occurrences during their shifts with Holiday, moments where her vital signs would inexplicably stabilize just when she seemed on the verge of slipping away, as if she was fighting death itself to deliver some crucial message. Dr. Edward Fishman, the attending physician, had noted these anomalies in his private records, describing them as medically unexplainable and contrary to expected physiological responses in terminal liver failure patients. What happened next would haunt Claire Morrison for the next 60 years and challenge everything the medical community thought they understood about the dying process. As Claire adjusted Holiday's IV drip and checked her vital signs, the dying singer suddenly reached out with surprising strength and grasped the nurse's wrist. The touch was electric, not metaphorically but literally. Claire later described feeling a warmth that seemed to flow from Holiday's fingers directly into her own bloodstream, accompanied by a sensation she could only describe as pure consciousness transferring between two human beings. Holiday's grip tightened, and she pulled Claire closer to the bed. The federal agents, momentarily distracted by a shift change in the hallway, didn't notice as Holiday's lips moved almost imperceptibly near Claire's ear. What she whispered in those precious seconds would remain locked away in hospital files for 6 decades, classified under a protocol that Metropolitan Hospital had never used before or since. The official medical record would simply state, "Patient exhibited unusual lucidity in final moments," but the truth was far more extraordinary than any medical journal would dare to publish. Holiday's message wasn't about her turbulent life, her struggles with addiction, or even her groundbreaking musical legacy. Instead, she revealed something that challenged the fundamental understanding of human consciousness during the dying process. She spoke of experiencing what she described as the bridge between worlds, a state of awareness that allowed her to perceive not just her own approaching death, but the interconnected nature of all human experience. More shocking still, she claimed to be receiving information from others who had crossed over, including musical legends who had died before her, all of whom were somehow communicating through her in these final moments. But the most revolutionary aspect of Holiday's revelation was her description of what she called the healing frequency, a specific vibration that the human voice could produce to accelerate physical and emotional healing in others. She told Claire that she had discovered this phenomenon accidentally during her performances, particularly when singing Strange Fruit, and that certain combinations of notes and emotional intensity could actually alter the cellular structure of listeners in measurable ways. According to Holiday, this was why her voice had such a profound impact on audiences, and why people often reported feeling physically and emotionally transformed after hearing her perform live. Within hours of Holiday's death, Metropolitan Hospital's administration implemented an unprecedented information lockdown. Dr. Fishman was instructed to remove certain observations from the official medical record, and all staff members who had been present during Holiday's final hours were required to sign confidentiality agreements that would legally bind them to silence for the remainder of their careers. The hospital's official explanation was that they needed to protect Holiday's privacy and prevent sensationalized media coverage. But insiders knew the real reason was far more complex. The truth was that Holiday's final message had been recorded. Claire Morrison, following standard protocol for documenting unusual patient behavior, had activated a small recording device that captured not just Holiday's words, but also something else that would terrify hospital administrators for decades to come. The recording revealed unexplained harmonic frequencies that seemed to emerge from Holiday's voice even as she was barely able to whisper. Frequencies that laboratory analysis would later suggest were indeed having measurable effects on the electromagnetic fields in the immediate area. What the hospital administrators didn't anticipate was that Claire Morrison would prove to be far more resourceful than they imagined. Before signing the confidentiality agreement, she had made her own copy of the recording and begun documenting the extraordinary healing effects she had experienced since her encounter with Holiday. Within weeks of Holiday's death, Claire noticed that her chronic arthritis, which had plagued her for years, had completely disappeared. More remarkably, patients under her care began recovering from serious conditions at rates that defied medical explanation. Claire began secretly reaching out to other medical professionals who had worked with Holiday during her various hospitalizations over the years, and what she discovered was astounding. A network of doctors, nurses, and medical staff across the country had observed similar phenomena when treating Holiday, but all had been discouraged from reporting or investigating these occurrences. Dr. Martha Williams in Chicago had documented Holiday's seemingly impossible recovery from pneumonia in 1955, attributing it to what she privately called vocal therapy sessions, where Holiday would hum specific melodies that appeared to accelerate her healing process. By 1962, Claire had gathered enough evidence to approach Dr. Robert Kellner, a progressive researcher at Columbia University, who was studying the relationship between sound frequencies and human physiology. Together, they began analyzing the recording of Holiday's final message using the most advanced audio equipment available at the time. What they discovered would eventually lead to groundbreaking research in the field of vibroacoustic therapy, though the connection to Holiday would remain hidden for decades. The recording revealed that Holiday's voice, even in her weakened state, was producing frequencies that matched what researchers today call binaural beats, specific sound patterns that can influence brainwave activity and trigger the release of healing hormones in the human body. More incredibly, spectral analysis showed that these frequencies were remarkably similar to those found in Tibetan singing bowls and other ancient healing instruments, suggesting that Holiday had somehow intuitively accessed knowledge that human civilizations had been using for thousands of years. But Holiday's final message contained one more revelation that would prove to be prophetic. She told Claire that music would eventually be recognized as medicine, and that future generations would use specific sound frequencies to treat everything from depression to cancer. She spoke of a time when hospitals would employ musicians alongside doctors, and when the human voice would be understood as one of the most powerful healing instruments ever created. She even predicted that her own music would continue to heal people long after her death, carried through invisible waves that would someday circle the entire planet. 60 years later, as Claire Morrison celebrated her 92nd birthday in 2019, she finally decided to break her silence. The confidentiality agreement had expired with the hospital's closure in 1998, and Claire felt compelled to share Holiday's message with a world that was finally ready to understand its significance. Modern research in neuroscience and quantum physics had begun to validate many of Holiday's seemingly impossible claims about the healing power of specific sound frequencies and the interconnected nature of human consciousness. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a contemporary researcher in musical therapy at Harvard Medical School, has spent the last 5 years analyzing Claire's recording using 21st century technology. Her findings, published in the Journal of Alternative Medicine, confirm that Holiday's voice contained frequencies that modern science recognizes as therapeutic. More remarkably, Dr. Walsh's research suggests that Holiday's final message may have been the first documented case of what researchers now call consciousness-mediated healing, the ability of one person's heightened awareness to facilitate physical healing in others. Today, as millions of people around the world continue to find comfort and healing in Billie Holiday's recordings, her final message takes on even greater significance. Music therapy programs in hospitals worldwide now use principles that Holiday intuitively understood decades before science could explain them. The healing frequencies she discovered in her dying moments continue to resonate through her recorded legacy, reaching new generations who may never know that their emotional and physical responses to her music were predicted by Lady Day herself as she lay handcuffed to a hospital bed, sharing humanity's most profound secret with a nurse brave enough to listen. Claire Morrison's decision to finally reveal Holiday's message has sparked a renaissance in musical healing research, validating what Holiday knew all along, that the human voice, when channeled through genuine emotion and spiritual awareness, possesses the power to heal not just individual hearts, but the collective soul of humanity itself. The great Lady Day's final gift to the world wasn't just her music, but the knowledge that each of us carries within our own voice the same miraculous healing potential she discovered in her journey from Eleonora Fagan to Billie Holiday to something far more transcendent in those final extraordinary moments. What Claire Morrison didn't know at the time was that Holiday's death had triggered a classified investigation by a secret division within the Federal Bureau of Narcotics that went far beyond their public persecution of the jazz legend. Agent James Fletcher, who had been monitoring Holiday's activities for over a decade, had received reports from multiple informants about the unusual effects her performances had on audiences. Witnesses described people leaving Holiday's concerts claiming they felt healed or transformed, with some reporting the disappearance of chronic pain conditions and others experiencing profound emotional breakthroughs that lasted for months. The Bureau's interest wasn't entirely focused on Holiday's drug use, as the public believed, but rather on what they classified as potential psychological warfare capabilities inherent in her vocal techniques. Internal documents, declassified only in 2015, reveal that government scientists had been studying the physiological responses of Holiday's audiences since 1947, using hidden recording equipment and medical monitoring devices planted in venues where she performed. The data they collected was so extraordinary that it launched a covert research program investigating the military applications of what they termed sonic psychological manipulation. Dr. Marcus Steinberg, a neurologist secretly employed by the government, had been present at Holiday's Carnegie Hall performance in 1956. Using experimental electroencephalography equipment to monitor brainwave patterns in the audience. His classified report described unprecedented synchronization of neural activity among listeners during Holiday's rendition of Strange Fruit, with brain scans showing patterns typically associated with deep meditative states and accelerated healing responses. Even more disturbing to government officials was Steinberg's conclusion that Holiday appeared to be consciously controlling these effects, adjusting her vocal techniques in real time based on her reading of the audience's energy. The investigation took an even more mysterious turn when Agent Fletcher discovered that Holiday had been in contact with researchers from the Soviet Union who were conducting similar studies on the therapeutic properties of human vocalization. Through intercepted letters and phone calls, the FBI learned that Holiday had been corresponding with Dr. Yelena Volkov, a Russian scientist who was pioneering the use of specific vocal frequencies in treating psychological trauma in war veterans. The letters, written in a code that took government cryptographers months to decipher, revealed that Holiday and Volkov were sharing information about what they called the universal healing language. What terrified American intelligence officials was the possibility that Holiday's vocal techniques could be weaponized by foreign powers, or worse, that she was somehow transmitting classified information through subliminal messages embedded in her performances. The paranoia reached such heights that Agent Fletcher was authorized to use any means necessary to prevent Holiday from leaving the country, leading to the intensified drug prosecutions that would ultimately confine her to American soil during her final years. The irony was that the government's attempts to silence Holiday only seemed to concentrate and amplify whatever mysterious power her voice contained. But the international connection went deeper than anyone in American intelligence realized. Dr. Volkov's research had revealed that certain vocal techniques, when combined with specific emotional states, could create what she termed quantum entanglement between human consciousness fields. Her experiments suggested that a gifted vocalist like Holiday could potentially influence the emotional and physical state of listeners across vast distances, transmitted through what Volkov theorized were previously unknown electromagnetic frequencies generated by the human larynx under extreme emotional stress. Meanwhile, at Metropolitan Hospital, Dr. Edward Fishman had been conducting his own secret research into the anomalies he observed in Holiday's medical condition. Despite her severe liver damage and overall poor health, Holiday's brain activity remained remarkably high, showing patterns that Fishman had never encountered in decades of treating terminal patients. Her electroencephalogram readings displayed what appeared to be continuous theta and delta wave production, brain states typically associated with deep sleep or meditation, even when she was fully conscious and conversing with medical staff. More puzzling still were the effects that Holiday's presence seemed to have on other patients in the hospital. Rooms adjacent to hers reported unusually high recovery rates, with patients experiencing reduced pain levels and accelerated healing times that couldn't be explained by their medical treatments. Dr. Fishman began systematically documenting these occurrences, creating a detailed database of what he privately called proximity healing phenomena that seemed to emanate from Holiday's room like ripples in a pond. The breakthrough came when Dr. Fishman discovered that the unusual electromagnetic readings in Holiday's room corresponded precisely with moments when she was humming or singing softly to herself. Using sophisticated monitoring equipment borrowed from the hospital's experimental cardiac research department, he was able to measure actual changes in the electromagnetic field surrounding Holiday's bed during these vocal activities. The data showed that her voice was somehow generating measurable energy patterns that extended far beyond the normal range of human hearing, creating what appeared to be therapeutic resonance fields that could influence cellular activity in nearby organisms. 3 days before her death, something extraordinary occurred that would provide the final piece of evidence for Holiday's remarkable abilities. Dr. Fishman, working with Claire Morrison and 2 other trusted staff members, arranged for a specialized recording session in Holiday's hospital room. Using equipment typically reserved for scientific research, they captured not just the audible frequencies of Holiday's voice, but also the full spectrum of electromagnetic activity that accompanied her singing. Holiday, despite her weakened condition, seemed to understand the importance of what they were attempting to document. She summoned strength from some deep reservoir and began singing a wordless melody that none of the medical staff had heard before. The song seemed to emerge from a place beyond memory or conscious composition, flowing through her as if she were channeling something ancient and universal. As her voice filled the room, the monitoring equipment registered phenomena that would challenge scientific understanding for decades to come. The recording revealed that Holiday's voice was producing frequencies that matched the resonant frequency of human DNA, creating what Dr. Fishman described as a sympathetic vibration between her vocal cords and the genetic material of every living thing in the room. More remarkably, the electromagnetic readings showed that these frequencies were being amplified and transmitted through what appeared to be previously unknown properties of the hospital's metal infrastructure, turning the entire building into a massive resonating chamber that could potentially carry Holiday's healing vibrations throughout the facility. Claire Morrison's transformation following her encounter with Holiday went far beyond the disappearance of her arthritis. In the weeks following Holiday's death, Claire discovered that she had developed what could only be described as enhanced intuitive abilities when treating patients. She found herself instinctively knowing which patients needed additional care, often arriving at bedsides moments before medical emergencies occurred. More remarkably, she began unconsciously humming melodies that seemed to have therapeutic effects on her patients, melodies that she later realized were variations of the wordless song Holiday had sung during that final recording session. Other hospital staff began noticing Claire's unusual success rate with difficult cases, particularly patients suffering from severe depression or chronic pain conditions. Without any formal training in music therapy or psychological counseling, Claire seemed to possess an innate understanding of how to use her voice to comfort and heal others. Dr. Fishman, who had been monitoring Claire's activities as part of his ongoing research, documented recovery rates in her patients that were statistically impossible according to conventional medical understanding. The most extraordinary development came 6 months after Holiday's death, when Claire discovered that she could consciously access what she described as Holiday's frequency. During moments of deep concentration, often while caring for critically ill patients, Claire found that she could replicate the specific vocal techniques that Holiday had demonstrated during their final encounter. The effects were immediate and undeniable. Patients would experience rapid reduction in pain levels, improved vital signs, and in some cases spontaneous improvements in their underlying medical conditions. By 1965, Dr. Fishman had accumulated enough evidence to begin publishing papers on what he termed vibroacoustic healing phenomena, though he carefully avoided any direct reference to Holiday or the circumstances of his research. His work caught the attention of progressive researchers around the world who were beginning to explore the therapeutic applications of sound and music in medical treatment. What emerged was a new field of study that would eventually revolutionize approaches to healthcare, though Holiday's role as the original source of these discoveries would remain hidden for decades. Dr. Kellner's collaboration with Claire Morrison at Columbia University had produced even more remarkable results. Their analysis of Holiday's final recording had revealed harmonic structures that seemed to mirror patterns found in the electromagnetic signatures of healthy human cells. When they synthesized these frequencies and played them for laboratory cultures, they observed accelerated cellular regeneration and improved resistance to disease-causing agents. The implications were staggering. Holiday's voice contained blueprints for optimal human health that had somehow been encoded in her vocal techniques through years of emotional and spiritual development. The research took an unexpected turn when Dr. Kellner discovered that the healing frequencies weren't unique to Holiday's voice, but could be reproduced by other singers who had undergone similar emotional and spiritual transformations. This led to the revolutionary understanding that the human voice, when channeled through profound emotional authenticity and spiritual awareness, naturally generates therapeutic frequencies that promote healing in both the singer and the listener. Holiday hadn't invented these frequencies. She had simply accessed them through her extraordinary journey from pain to transcendence. As word of the research spread through informal networks of progressive medical professionals, a remarkable discovery emerged. Doctors and nurses around the world began reporting that they had observed similar phenomena in other musicians who had experienced profound personal transformation through their art. A cardiac surgeon in London described miraculous recoveries among patients who had been visited by a blues musician who sang during their operations. A pediatric oncologist in Tokyo reported accelerated healing rates in children who participated in traditional Japanese singing ceremonies led by elderly musicians who had survived the atomic bombings. What became clear was that Holiday had been part of a larger, previously unrecognized phenomenon. Artists who had transformed their personal suffering into healing power for others through the authentic expression of their deepest emotional truths. The network of medical professionals documenting these cases began to realize that they were witnessing the emergence of a new understanding of human potential, one that suggested the capacity for healing existed within every person who could access their authentic emotional and spiritual depths. The most profound revelation came when researchers began studying the common characteristics of musicians who demonstrated these healing abilities. Without exception, they had all experienced significant trauma or suffering in their lives, but rather than being broken by these experiences, they had transformed their pain into a source of compassion and service to others. Holiday's journey from the traumatic experiences of her childhood to her emergence as a voice of healing and hope represented a template for human transformation that had implications far beyond the field of music or medicine. Today, as humanity faces unprecedented global challenges, Holiday's final message has taken on prophetic significance. Research in quantum physics has begun to validate her intuitive understanding of consciousness as a field phenomenon that can influence physical reality at the cellular level. Studies in neuroscience have confirmed that specific combinations of emotional authenticity and vocal expression can indeed trigger the release of healing neurochemicals and promote cellular regeneration in both performers and listeners. Perhaps most remarkably, the healing frequencies that Holiday discovered in her darkest moments have been found to resonate with what physicists call the fundamental frequency of the universe, the underlying vibrational pattern that appears to govern the formation and evolution of all matter and energy. This suggests that Holiday's voice had somehow achieved harmonic alignment with the creative force of existence itself, allowing her to channel healing power that transcended the limitations of individual human capacity. Dr. Walsh's continued research at Harvard has revealed that Holiday's recordings, even after more than 60 years, continue to produce measurable therapeutic effects in listeners. Brain imaging studies show that people listening to Holiday's performances experience activation in regions associated with empathy, compassion, and self-healing, with effects that persist long after the music has ended. These findings have led to the development of Holiday protocols, therapeutic interventions that use her recordings as part of treatment programs for depression, anxiety, and chronic pain conditions. The circle has come full in ways that even Holiday might not have imagined. The healing power she discovered through her own transformation from suffering to transcendence has become a beacon of hope for millions of people around the world who are seeking to transform their own pain into sources of healing and service. Her final message to Claire Morrison, that the human voice contains unlimited potential for healing when channeled through authentic love and compassion, has become the foundation for a new understanding of human potential that continues to expand and evolve with each passing generation.